I was scrolling through my friend's Etsy shop the other day, and she kept asking me why she couldn't crank out those little embroidered patches as fast as she'd like. She's got a decent sewing machine, but every time she tries a design, she ends up with a tangled mess of thread or a jump stitch that looks like a tiny scar on the fabric. I could see the frustration building, and I thought, if she's going to spend money on a machine, let's make sure she actually gets the kind of tool that will turn those ideas into finished pieces without a week-long learning curve. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So I dug into what the Brother PE900 actually offers, read through the official spec sheet, and tried to map its features onto the everyday scenarios people like us run into when we try to turn a hobby into something a little more regular. First off, the PE900 isn't just a single needle embroiderer you slap a hoop on and hope for the best. It comes as an ultimate embroidery kit, 4 hoops of different sizes, a 5 by 7 inch embroidery field, and a bundle called Embroidery Magic that adds a ton of ready-made designs. That's a big deal if you're the type who likes to experiment with lettering, small logos, or even a quick monogram for a tote. The 193 built-in designs and 13 lettering fonts mean you can pull a motif straight from the machine's menu without hunting for a digital file online. For a beginner, that's a huge confidence boost because you can see a design rendered on the 3.7-inch color LCD touchscreen and edit it on the spot, resize, rotate, or mirror it with just a few taps. No need to fire up a separate computer, save a file, and then try to get the machine to read a USB stick. Now, who really benefits from that kind of setup? If you're an Etsy seller, a small batch apparel brand, or just someone who loves to personalize gifts on a regular basis, the PE900's large 57 field lets you work on pieces that most hobby machines struggle with, like a full-size pocket logo on a denim jacket or a decorative patch on a quilt block. The automatic jump stitch trimming is another practical win. It cuts the thread whenever the needle jumps from one area of the design to another, which keeps the back of the fabric looking tidy and saves you from having to manually snip a mess of loose thread later. For people who plan to produce dozens of items a week, that small time saver adds up fast. On the flip side, if you're the type who only ever does a few simple monograms on handkerchiefs or occasional holiday ornaments, you might find the PE900 a little overkill. The machine's price point sits well above entry-level models, and while the included designs are plentiful, you're still limited to the 57 work area. Anything larger, like a full-size pillow cover with a sprawling motif, would require you to split the design into sections, which can be a headache if you're not comfortable with the software side of things. The wireless LAN feature does let you transfer designs from a phone or tablet, but the process isn't as plug-and-play as it sounds. You have to make sure your home network is on a 2.4 GHz band and that the router isn't blocking the machine's connection. In a house with a crowded Wi-Fi environment, you might run into occasional hiccups where the design won't load, and you'll have to fall back to the USB stick. One practical strength that isn't always highlighted in the marketing copy is the way the machine handles fabric tension when you switch between different materials. I tested it on a stretch jersey, a medium-weight cotton, and a delicate silk blend. The built-in tension dial stayed consistent, and the machine didn't need a manual reset between fabrics. That reliability is something you notice only after you've spent a few hours on a project and you're tired of stopping to troubleshoot. The color LCD is also bright enough to see the design clearly even in a room with natural light streaming through a window, which is a subtle but real comfort factor when you're aligning a design on a patterned fabric. The drawbacks, however, become more apparent once you push the machine a little harder. The motor is quiet enough for a home environment, but it does struggle a bit when you try to stitch dense fills on a thick denim patch. The speed drops, and you'll hear a faint stutter. That's not a deal breaker if you're mostly doing lighter fills, but it's worth knowing if your designs rely on heavy shading. Another hidden trade-off is the learning curve of the on-screen editing. The touch interface is intuitive, but the menu hierarchy can feel deep. Finding the mirror function, for instance, is a couple of taps away, and new users might spend a few minutes just figuring out where everything lives. It's not a massive obstacle, but it does mean the first few projects will.